Hi everyone, welcome to the channel After All That Years.
My name is David, and at 62 years old, I never imagined I'd be writing these words. After 4 decades of what I thought was a solid marriage, everything I believed about my life turned out to be a facade. If you're taking the time to read this, I should warn you up front. What happened to me might shake you to your core, just as it did to me. Ellen and I met when we were barely out of college. We were young, broke, and completely convinced we could take on the world together. We started with nothing, a tiny apartment, second-hand furniture, and dreams bigger than our bank account. Over the years, we built something beautiful, a modest home in a quiet neighborhood, 2 kids who made us proud, and what I genuinely believed was an unshakable bond between us. Last Tuesday started like any other evening. We'd finished our usual dinner routine. Nothing special, just the comfortable rhythm we'd developed over all those years together. But Ellen seemed different that night. She kept glancing at me with this strange expression, like she was working up the courage to say something important. Usually after dinner, she'd be puttering around the kitchen, wiping down counters while telling me about her day or reminding me about weekend plans. This time, though, she just stood there, drying the same plate over and over again. "David," she finally said, setting the plate down carefully, "we need to sit down and talk." Something in her voice made my stomach drop. It wasn't her usual tone. This was serious, heavy, with something I couldn't identify yet. I followed her to the living room, watching as she perched on the edge of the sofa, like she might bolt at any moment. "What's on your mind?" I asked, settling into my usual spot across from her. I was trying to keep things light, but honestly, her demeanor was starting to worry me. She stared at her hands for the longest time, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. When she finally looked up, her eyes were already filled with tears. "There's something I've never told you," she whispered. "Something from a long time ago, but I can't carry it anymore." That's when I knew this wasn't going to be about weekend plans or household repairs. My heart started racing as I watched her struggle with whatever she was about to say. "Do you remember Robert?" she asked suddenly. "Our neighbor from the old house on Maple Street?" The question caught me completely off guard. Robert had lived next door to us back in the early days of our marriage, maybe 25 years ago. Pleasant enough guy, always ready with a wave or a quick chat over the fence. I hadn't thought about him in years. "Sure, I remember him," I said slowly. "Why are you bringing him up now?" Ellen's composure cracked then. The tears she'd been holding back started flowing freely as she wrapped her arms around herself like she was trying to hold something in. "Back then, when you were putting in all those overtime hours at the plant," she began, her voice barely audible. "Robert and we got involved." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt dizzy for a moment, like the room had tilted sideways. I must have misunderstood what she was saying. "Involved how?" I managed to ask, though part of me already knew the answer. "We had an affair, David. It went on for about 4 months. 4 months. 4 months of coming home exhausted from 12-hour shifts, kissing my wife hello, playing with our young children, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire world was built on a lie." I sat there in complete silence, watching her cry, and all I could think was how normal everything had seemed during that time, how she'd greet me at the door with dinner ready and a smile on her face, how we'd talk about our days, our plans, our future together, all while she was living this double life I never suspected. "Why now?" I finally asked. My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from someone else entirely. "After all this time, why are you telling me this now?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving mascara streaks on her cheeks. "I can't live with it anymore, David. The guilt has been eating me alive for 25 years. You deserve to know the truth." The truth. As if the truth was some kind of gift she was giving me, rather than a bomb that just destroyed everything I thought I knew about our life together. I stood up because I couldn't sit still anymore. My hands were shaking, and I felt like I might throw up. All those years of trusting her completely, of never questioning her loyalty, of building our entire life on what I thought was mutual love and respect. It had all been an illusion. Did you love him? The question came out before I could stop myself. Ellen flinched like I'd slapped her. No, she said quickly. It wasn't about love, David. I was lonely, and you were working so much, and he was just there. It was selfish and stupid, and I've regretted it every single day since. Lonely. She'd been lonely, so she decided to solve that problem by sleeping with our neighbor. While I was working myself to death to provide for our family, she was finding comfort in another man's arms. How long? I demanded. How long did this thing with Robert last? About 4 months, she repeated, her voice getting smaller. From spring into summer that year. 4 months of lies. 4 months of coming home to her, trusting her, loving her, while she was betraying everything we'd built together. I felt sick thinking about all the times during that period when I'd held her, told her I loved her, made plans for our future together. And then what happened? You just decided to end it. Ellen looked down again, and something in her expression made my blood run cold. He ended it, she whispered. He told me he'd met someone else and was moving away. That's when I realized what I'd thrown away for someone who never really cared about me at all. That was somehow worse than everything else she'd told me. She hadn't ended the affair because she realized it was wrong or because she loved me too much to continue hurting me. She'd only stopped because the other man had tossed her aside like she meant nothing to him. So let me understand this correctly, I said, my voice getting harder with each word. You didn't stop because you felt guilty about betraying me. You stopped because he dumped you for someone else. She started sobbing then, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no desire to comfort her. Nothing. For the first time in our marriage, her tears meant absolutely nothing to me. I'm sorry, David. I'm so sorry. I know I can't take it back, but I'll do anything to make this right. Make it right. How do you make right 25 years of living with someone who was capable of such a massive deception? How do you trust again after learning that the person you thought you knew better than anyone else had been a complete stranger all along? I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. I couldn't be in the same room with her anymore. Where are you going? She called after me, panic creeping into her voice. I don't know, I said without turning around, but I can't be here right now. The night air was cold against my face as I walked aimlessly through our neighborhood. These were the same streets we'd walked together countless times over the years, hand in hand when we were younger, talking about everything and nothing, planning our future together. Every memory felt poisoned now. Had she been thinking about Robert during our conversations? Had she been comparing me to him? How many times had I unknowingly made some reference to him in casual conversation, not knowing that my wife had been intimate with the man I considered just a friendly neighbor? I found myself at the elementary school where our kids had played when they were small. The playground was empty now, the swings moving slightly in the breeze. Ellen and I used to bring the children here on weekends, taking turns pushing them on these same swings while we talked about work, about the house, about our hopes for their futures. How had she managed to keep such a massive secret all these years? How had she looked me in the eye every day, said she loved me, made love to me, planned our life together, all while carrying this betrayal inside her? My phone buzzed with a text from Ellen. Please come home. We need to talk about this. Talk about what exactly? What was there to discuss? She'd had an affair, lied to me for 25 years, and only confessed because her guilt had finally become unbearable. What conversation could possibly make any of this better? But I couldn't walk around all night. And despite everything, part of me still needed answers. I needed to understand how the woman I trusted more than anyone else in the world had been capable of such deception. When I got back to the house, Ellen was waiting in the kitchen, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked up hopefully when I walked in, like maybe my return meant forgiveness was possible. "I'm here," I said, hanging up my jacket. "You wanted to talk, so talk." She took a shaky breath. "I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But David, that affair was the biggest mistake of my life. I've spent 25 years trying to be the wife you deserved, trying to make up for what I did." Make up for it? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. "By lying to me every single day for a quarter of a century. That's your idea of making amends." "I didn't know how to tell you," she said, fresh tears starting. "At first, I thought I could just end it and pretend it never happened. Then months went by, then years, and it seemed like telling you would only hurt you for no reason." "For no reason?" I stared at her, in disbelief. "Ellen, this wasn't your decision to make. You took away my right to know the truth about my own marriage, my own life. You let me live in a fantasy while you knew exactly what kind of person you really were." She had no answer for that. She just sat there crying while I tried to process the magnitude of what she'd done. It wasn't just the affair itself. It was the years of deception that followed. Every anniversary we'd celebrated, every time we'd talked about trust and honesty in our marriage, every moment when I'd felt grateful for having such a loyal, devoted wife, all of it had been built on lies. "I need to know everything," I said finally. "If we're going to have any chance of getting through this, I need the whole truth. No more secrets, no more lies." Ellen nodded eagerly, like she was relieved to finally unburden herself completely. But as she began to tell me the details of her betrayal, how it started, where they met, how she managed to hide it from me, I realized that knowing the truth wasn't bringing me any peace. If anything, each detail made the betrayal feel more real, more devastating. She told me it had started innocently enough. I was putting in 60-hour weeks at the plant that summer, trying to get ahead financially so we could start thinking about a bigger house. Robert had been going through a divorce and was spending a lot of time working in his yard, seemingly just to have something to do. He'd see me in the garden and come over to chat, Ellen said, her voice barely above a whisper. At first, it was just neighborly conversation. But then, he started asking how I was doing, really doing. He said I looked tired, stressed. He was the first person in months who seemed to actually see me. I remembered that summer. I'd been exhausted every night when I came home, focused on providing for our family, but probably not paying enough attention to what Ellen needed emotionally. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but I could see how it had started. "When did it cross the line?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I really wanted to know. "One afternoon in late May," she said, staring at her hands. "You were at work. The kids were at day camp. I was having a particularly bad day. I can't even remember why now. And he saw me crying in the garden. He came over to comfort me, and one thing led to another." The clinical way she described it made it somehow worse. Like our marriage, our family, everything we'd built together had been destroyed by one thing leading to another. "Where?" I asked, hating myself for needing to know but unable to stop. "Usually at his place," she said quietly. "Sometimes in the afternoons when you were at work and the kids were out. A few times in our house when you were working late." Our house, our bed. The thought made me physically ill. How many times had I come home and kissed her hello, completely unaware that she'd spent the afternoon with another man in our bedroom? "The letter you showed me," I said suddenly, remembering the piece of paper she'd given me the night she confessed. You said Robert wrote you a letter before he moved away. Ellen nodded and went upstairs, returning with a wrinkled envelope she pulled from a jewelry box. I kept it all these years, she said. I don't know why. Maybe as a reminder of how stupid I'd been. I took the letter with hands that weren't quite steady. Robert's handwriting was neat, businesslike. The message was short and cold. Ellen, I wanted to let you know I'll be moving to Denver next month. I've met someone here, and we're planning to start fresh together. I think it's best if we end things between us now. You're a good person, and I hope you can find happiness with David. Take care, Robert. That was it. 4 months of betraying our marriage, and he'd summarized it in a few impersonal sentences. Ellen had risked everything for someone who couldn't even be bothered to acknowledge the magnitude of what they'd done. This is what you threw away our marriage for? I asked, holding up the letter. Someone who wrote to you like you were a casual business acquaintance? Ellen's face crumpled. I know how it looks, David. I know how pathetic it all was. I realized that as soon as I got the letter. That's when I understood what I'd really done, what I'd risked for someone who never cared about me at all. But you didn't tell me then, I said. You could have confessed 25 years ago when you realized what a mistake you'd made. Instead, you kept lying to me every day for another quarter-century. I was scared, she whispered. I was terrified of losing you, of destroying our family. I thought if I could just be a better wife going forward, if I could make you happy, then maybe the affair could stay in the past where it belonged. That wasn't your choice to make, I said, anger rising in my voice again. You took away my right to decide whether I could forgive you or not. You let me believe I was married to someone who would never betray me, when all along you knew exactly what you were capable of. By the time Ellen finished telling me everything, I felt completely hollow inside. Every detail painted a picture of deception that went far beyond the affair itself. She'd orchestrated lie after lie to cover her tracks, had become an expert at compartmentalizing her betrayal while maintaining the facade of a loving, devoted wife. What happens now? She asked when she'd told me everything. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and she looked genuinely afraid of my answer. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't know who she was anymore. The Ellen I'd loved and trusted for 40 years had never really existed. She'd been an illusion, a character my wife had created to hide who she really was. I don't know, I said honestly. I need time to figure that out. The next morning, I packed a bag and checked into a hotel across town. I told Ellen I needed space to think, to decide what I wanted to do next. She begged me not to leave, promised she'd do anything to save our marriage, but I couldn't stay in that house anymore. Every room held memories that now felt like lies. Sitting in that anonymous hotel room, staring out at a parking lot instead of the garden Ellen and I had planted together, I tried to figure out what the rest of my life was going to look like. Could I forgive her? Did I want to? Could our marriage survive this kind of betrayal? Or was it already over, killed by 25 years of deception? The hardest part was realizing how many moments from our marriage now felt tainted. Every time she'd tease me about being too trusting, every conversation we'd had about other couples' infidelities, every anniversary when she'd told me how grateful she was for our honest, faithful marriage. All of it had been lies. I thought about our children, now adults with families of their own. Did they deserve to know what kind of person their mother really was? Or would telling them only cause more pain without serving any real purpose? I thought about our friends, the couples we'd spent decades socializing with. How many of them knew about Ellen's affair? Had I been the only one living in ignorance, while everyone else whispered behind my back about poor David, whose wife had cheated on him years ago? The questions were endless, and the answers felt impossible to find. But one thing was becoming clear. Whether our marriage survived this betrayal or not, I would never again be the man who trusted completely, loved without reservation, believed in the fairy tale of perfect partnerships. Ellen called me every day I was at the hotel. She sent texts apologizing, promising to do whatever it took to earn back my trust. She suggested counseling, offered to cut ties with anyone who had known about the affair, swore she'd spend the rest of her life making it up to me. But how do you make up for 25 years of deception? How do you rebuild trust when the foundation of your entire relationship has been revealed as quicksand? After a week at the hotel, I realized I couldn't hide there forever. I had to make a decision about what came next, even if I wasn't sure what the right choice was. I drove back to the house on a Thursday evening, the same night of the week when Ellen had first confessed her betrayal. She was waiting in the kitchen when I walked in, her face a mixture of hope and terror. "David," she said softly, "I'm glad you came back." "I'm not back," I said, setting my bag down by the door. "I'm here to talk. There's a difference." She nodded, gesturing toward the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals over the decades. Now, it felt like sitting across from a stranger. "I've been thinking about everything you told me," I began, "and I keep coming back to the same question. Who are you really, Ellen? Because the woman I thought I married would never have been capable of this level of deception." She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand to stop her. "I'm not looking for more apologies or explanations," I continued. "I need to understand something fundamental. You lived with this secret for 25 years. You looked me in the eye every single day and chose to lie to me. That takes a kind of compartmentalization, a kind of coldness that I never knew existed in you." Ellen's face went pale. "It wasn't coldness, David. It was cowardice. Pure and simple. Every day I wanted to tell you, but every day I convinced myself that keeping the secret was kinder than destroying our family." "Kinder to who?" I asked. "Certainly not to me. You took away my right to make an informed decision about my own life. You let me waste 25 years loving someone who didn't really exist." "I do exist," she said desperately. "The woman you fell in love with, the woman you married, the mother of your children. That's who I really am. The affair was an aberration, a terrible mistake that doesn't define who I am as a person." But that's where she was wrong. The affair itself might have been a mistake, but the years of deception that followed, that was a choice she made every single day. That was exactly who she was, someone capable of maintaining an elaborate lie for decades while appearing to be the most honest, loving person in the world. I spent another week going back and forth, weighing my options. On one hand, Ellen and I had built a real life together. We'd raised 2 wonderful children, supported each other through illnesses and job losses and all the normal struggles of a long marriage. Those experiences were real, even if they'd been built on a foundation of lies. On the other hand, how could I ever trust her again? How could I wake up next to her every morning without wondering what other secrets she might be keeping? How could I believe anything she said, knowing how skilled she was at deception? Friends and family would probably tell me I should forgive her. After all, the affair had happened 25 years ago. She'd been faithful ever since, had been a good wife and mother. People make mistakes, they'd say. Everyone deserves a second chance. But this wasn't just about the affair. This was about a quarter-century of lies, of choosing deception over honesty every single day. This was about discovering that the person I'd trusted most in the world was someone I'd never really known at all. In the end, I realized the decision wasn't really about forgiveness. It was about whether I could build a new relationship with this stranger who looked like my wife. Knowing everything I now knew about who she really was. Some days, I thought maybe I could. We weren't young anymore. Starting over at 62 wasn't exactly appealing. We had grandchildren now, family traditions, a shared history that couldn't be erased by one terrible revelation. Other days, I couldn't imagine ever looking at her the same way again. Every kiss would feel like a lie. Every "I love you" would be tainted by the knowledge of what she'd done and hidden for so long. 3 months after Ellen's confession, I'm still living in that hotel room, still trying to decide what the rest of my life looks like. We meet for coffee sometimes, awkward conversations where she updates me on the grandchildren, and I try to figure out if the woman sitting across from me is someone I could ever trust again. She started seeing a counselor, she tells me, working through her guilt and trying to understand why she was capable of such deception. She asks if I'll consider couples counseling, if there's anything she can do to prove she's worthy of another chance. The honest answer is, I don't know. Some betrayals cut so deep, they change who you are fundamentally. I'm not the same man I was before her confession, and I'll never be that trusting, optimistic person again. The question is whether the man I've become is someone who can build a new relationship with Ellen, or someone who needs to start over completely. What I do know is this. If you're reading this and you're keeping a secret from someone you love, especially a secret this big, don't wait 25 years to confess it. The betrayal of the secret is bad enough, but the decades of deception that follow make it infinitely worse. Trust, once broken this completely, may never heal, and some of us aren't strong enough to spend the rest of our lives wondering what other lies might be hiding beneath the surface of the people we love most.